Today on CityCast Chicago, should Chicago's elected school board get paid? How's the Portillo's national expansion going? And speaking of Tillos, a member of the CityCast Chicago team tries it for the very first time. It's Tuesday, March 10th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. We've got executive producer Simone Alicea with us. Simone, how you feeling? How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. Yeah. I did some gaming stuff, went out and about. It was warm. So, yeah, good weekend. How about yours?
It was good. I got out and saw some art. I visited the Chicago Bee Library branch in Bronzeville. And right when you walk in, G, they have this amazing painting from Greg Spears called either a Bronzeville Afternoon or a Bronzeville Saturday. And it is so breathtaking. I stood there for no less than a combined 9 minutes between filming it, just looking at it. It is so beautiful. If you're ever in the area, please stop by and see it. But then I also went to the MCA. I got a nice walk in the sunshine over the weekend, and there's an exhibit from Fidelé Baez. Oh, Simone, it is so beautiful. They're a Dominican artist, and it's a commentary on colonialism in the Caribbean. The paintings were so beautiful. There's a part that's very immersive, takes you feels like you're swimming through this fabric of a blue ocean. It was wonderful. Just it was great. So that ends May 31st. So people still got a couple of months to go check it out. But it's like an explosion of color. I think that's the best way to define it. It's so beautiful. One story we want to talk about today is the Chicago School Board. This is something we have been following for the last 5 years. Back in 2021, Illinois lawmakers approved an elected school board here in Chicago for the first time ever, and a change over 30 years of mayoral control. We didn't actually get a sense of how that was going to look, who exactly we were going to be electing, what the breakdown was for a couple of years, but we did elect our school board members. What was that now?
In 2024.
In 2024,
we elected half of them.
10 of the 21. Another 11 were appointed by the mayor, including the head of the school board, reminding people of some of their responsibilities, right? They oversee the nation's now fourth largest school district. They hire, evaluate, can fire a CEO. They approve the budget, right? They set policy, yada, yada, yada. And Simone, on a ground level, that's a lot of work for the 21 people who are on that board. I know we're in election season right now, and at the end of this year, we're actually going to choose all of the people who sit on this board. And so considerations are up again on, should these folks be compensated?
Yeah, right now, school board members, it's a volunteer position. You are not paid. So those all 21.
Illinois actually doesn't allow you to
are not
pay
allowed
school board
to.
members.
Yeah. So neither the 10 elected members nor the 11 appointed members are paid right now. And so lawmakers in Springfield are currently debating a bill. And this has been debated over the past few years and was debated as part of that original 2021 legislation as well, of maybe we should revisit that. Maybe there should be a salary. And I believe the way that the current proposal would work is it would be up to the school district to set those salaries. The idea was if you make it a volunteer position, then you're attracting candidates who are primarily motivated by public service, right? They're not motivated by the paycheck, right? People who are advocating for paying school board members are well, that's all well and good, but A, it's a lot of work. You have the meetings themselves that you have to attend. You have to review all the documents ahead of those meetings. They're visiting schools or hosting office hours. And
these are not people like our alders who have camp ward offices, campaign staffs, things like that.
No. And the other thing too is they're overseeing a budget that is, is that $10 billion? Is that really?
Yeah. It's 10.5 or something.
$10.25 billion.
I loved your reaction to that. These volunteer positions are overseeing a budget of God.
I was
damn.
10 billion is a lot of money. That's a billion with a B. That's a lot of money.
And how many CPS staff numbers? 46,451.
It's the fourth largest school district in the country. It's interesting because the Chicago Tribune covered this, and they note that of the 10 largest school districts in the U.S., there are two that also have unpaid school boards. That's the New York City Department of Education and the Houston Independent School District. And
I was gonna say, what's the comp? Like, if they're thinking about where to set these salaries, where are some examples of large school districts that are paying people?
It's kind of, it really varies. And like, when you're like, okay, well, how much could that be? Well, you can compare it to LA, where school board members are paid more than $125,000.
So full-time job.
Yeah, right. Versus Miami, which again just surpassed us as they're now the third largest school district. They're paying $55,000. Those are two really big, those are very different salaries. If you want to compare it to some other Chicago city officials, our alders are making $123,000 a year to $152,000. So definitely more on that like LA side of things, right? So yeah, there's a lot that even if this legislation is passed, there's a lot we don't know. I think, like I said, this has been talked about since the inception of the elected school board. The other big reason to make them paid is because, like, the money's going into the campaigns. Certainly in 2024, campaign spending, according to Chalk Beat Chicago, topped $13 million. And that was just for half of the seats. So, extrapolate that to all 21 seats being up for election in November. You can imagine a lot of money flowing around.
And if the thought process at one point was, without a salary, making you a volunteer, you're going to attract people with a philanthropic spirit, right? Folks who want to do right on behalf of the school board, seemingly if that's people who work in school, like parents, everyday Chicagoans, whatever the case may be. But now that this is an elected school board, it's something that has been brought to the public attention more than it ever has been. We get a sense behind the curtain, and that isn't all of the people who are being attracted to these positions.
Well, I think more importantly, on the sense of like, you're only attracting people who can afford to spend all this time and do all this work without being paid for it, right? Which calls to question an issue of diversity in the school board, right? And it's interesting because, like, we actually don't sort of have data like indicating like, if you pay people, does that make the school board more diverse? But we do have data that indicates that more diverse school boards tend to make more well-rounded decisions. So, it's sort of an interesting debate here. And I think a reason that like this is sort of starting to maybe get some more traction where it hasn't before is like, now we actually see what the school board is doing. Like, we actually know what the job is. Whereas, the previously leading up to it, it was pretty theoretical. I think we're still working out the kinks, to be honest, in our system.
100%. Sort of setting that idealistic sense of, we want people who are, committed to the school board beyond the paycheck. It doesn't really get at how, again, important this role is and how highly politicized it has become, especially in recent years, especially as you see broader attacks on education funding as the school board faces intense budget concerns and budget debates in the years to come. This is all sort of being laid bare for Chicagoans much more explicitly in recent years. And I do think if you add a salary to this, maybe it brings in, more diverse.
A career,
Right. Maybe it's a full-time job for people who otherwise couldn't run. I do think the campaign spending is a barrier that doesn't necessarily get solved there. But I do think by paying folks, it does wake even more Chicagoans up to be like, you are more accountable to us.
Well, I was just going to say that's the other barrier, though, to paying these people is, Chicago already has budget problems. Chicago already had and the school district in particular has a projected $520 million deficit. So if we have to add salaries, 21 salaries on top of that, how does that
even
change
if you take it
the calculus?
Yeah, the halfway point of Miami and
LA.
And LA, you still looking at, what's that?
Well, it's got to be what, like 80K night?
Yeah, 80K. I was gonna say, what's that? 1.6 million.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a not insignificant amount of money. And so, yeah, where does that money come from? I don't know. The last thing on the school board front that I think is worth saying, number one, just sort of outlining again how this will work, right? So the school board elections will come up in the November general election ballot. You will have a district. So last year, you were part of a district that was a little bit bigger because we were only electing 10 people. Now those districts are going to be cut in half. So the district you're voting in is going to be a little bit smaller. And then you'll also we vote citywide for a school board president. And I believe they can come from any of the 20 districts. So that's what we're going to be facing here in November. Meanwhile, our current hybrid school board is still choosing a finalist, is still choosing who's going to run the district. We still don't have a permanent CPS CEO. It sounds like they have some finalists, although we don't. Those names have not yet been made public. And either way, it sounds like this person won't start until at least the summer. So a ways to go on that. And there have been some people who have asked that maybe we don't hire a CEO until this fully elected board is seated in early 2027. I find that very unlikely. Like, we've already been without a CEO since last June. And so I think they kind of need to get on this. Like I said, approving the budget and hiring the CEO are basically kind of the biggest things that a school board has to do. And they are, they haven't. That second one is they haven't done it yet.
I wonder how soon I'll start seeing those campaign mailers, campaign texts start flowing in.
Well, candidates are already kind of starting to, I think, like, declare that they're running, right? And, those petitions are going to come in over the summer and stuff, right? Like, it's as soon as this primary is over, we are going to be hearing a lot more about these school board races in November.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
For this next part of the conversation, we're bringing in the whole team. We got newsletter editor Emmy Mack back in the building. Emmy, how you feeling?
I'm feeling excited to talk about Portillo's.
We've also got producer Michelle Navarro with us.
Hey, Jacoby.
We got you here because this sparked a conversation when we saw it last week. A few years ago, Portillo's, right, the Chicagoland beloved company for the last 60 years, they expanded to a bunch of cities outside Illinois. They're trying to grow their national footprint, but I'm hearing it ain't really been panning out for them, right? Texas ain't showing up for them the way the South Loop do. And now they got a whole new CEO in the building. Simone, catch us up here.
Right. So as you said, Portillo's 63-year-old company, beloved icon here in Chicago. And even, just to kind of give a sense of the timeline here, by the time they were purchased by private equity in 2014, they had already expanded to Indiana, California, Arizona. But then, like I said, private equity sort of snatches them up in 2014. Fast forward to 2021, and they are launching a $466 million IPO. And the plan was to grow to 920 locations in 20 years. And they were going to focus especially in Texas, Atlanta, Vegas, sort of southern and western markets. And, so over the past 5 years, they have been, they've been aggressively opening these new locations, and it kind of hasn't really panned out the way they thought it would. During their third quarter earnings call, so at the end of last year, they showed that revenue was up just 1.8%. And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, but revenue is still up. You're still growing.
Right. They're not tanking money.
But not only is that slower than they expected, but when you look at their net income, it dropped from 8.8 million to under $1 million because of the costs associated with expansion. The costs are being overrun, and then a lot of snafus, especially in Texas, like I said, where they've opened like a lot of locations. One analyst sort of said it was like too many locations, too close together, too quickly.
16 since 2023.
And so the former CEO, Michael Sanlu, he resigned sort of under this immense pressure. And in February, after a 5-month search, the company announced that they have named new CEO Brett Patterson. He's the former CEO of Miller's Ale House, sort of a fast casual chain.
They've expanded from Florida to across places themselves. And I think they got 5 locations in the Chicago area.
Yeah. So, they're slowing down their expansion now. They're still expanding. They're still trying to open new locations, but they're focusing more on the pickup locations, so sort of takeout only. And they are not going to open nearly as many spots as they had planned to do. So, yeah, just kind of seems like it's not working out.
I mean, it ain't all bad news. The South Loop location, which I mentioned up top, is stay packed out. The Skokie location stay packed out. That South Loop spot pulled in $20 million last year. And they say the average for a location is around 8.7. And so they got some bright spots here at the crib still. But even here, didn't they have like a whole breakfast rollout that
didn't quite? Yeah, they did it for like less than a year, I feel like, the breakfast at Portillo's. And then they were like, actually, this isn't helping us very much.
Emmy, you actually have a story from when Portillo's went public a few years ago.
Yeah, so I was living in New York at the time, which was October 2021. And I was kind of preparing to move back to Chicago at the time, but I wasn't really sure what my plan was. I was 24 and I was feeling really unsure almost at that point in my life about where to live. And then I woke up that morning and there were 3 rats on my bedroom floor.
No.
And just as I found them in my room, I hear blood-curdling screams from my roommate's room. And so then we ended up in a hotel. Our landlord said he'd pay for a hotel. So we were like, screw it. We are going to the Margaritaville in Times Square, which had just opened. And then when I walked out of Margaritaville in the morning, I'm like, man, New York's awesome. Maybe I should stay here. And then I looked, and in the middle of Times Square was a gleaming, shiny red truck, Portillo's truck, which I couldn't even believe my eyes. And it was passing out free hot dogs and Italian beefs to everyone in Times Square to celebrate going public. So I was with my friends. I was so hyped to get everyone to try their first Chicago hot dog. And then I took one bite and I was like, never mind. Yeah, I'm moving back to Chicago. So it was a bit of a roller coaster. And I have some cool pictures too of just like holding up my Italian beef with Times Square billboards, blinking in the background. And I'm like, not many people have experienced that, having an Italian beef in the center of Times Square, because it is so tied to Chicago. That's why it's interesting to see how the rest of the country is responding to their first Italian beefs. Actually, not going to lie, my family bought stock in Portillo's that day. It felt like a sign. And they did lose out on that investment. Portillo's stock peaked about a month after that fateful day I had in Times Square at $54 a share. And today it's about $5.
I mean, damn.
I would have taken that as a sign too.
100%. If I was out in New York City and apartment just overrun with 3 bear rats, and I woke up to a Portillo's truck outside, I'd have been like, the crib is calling me. Because for me, like, Portillo's is like Giordano's. It was just like, for my family, it was that thing you got when something good was happening, when there was a movie we all wanted to rent at home, and so mom was going to go grab it or something like that. It was one of those things you just didn't have often. And though I'm going to keep it real, I don't really mess with Italian beefs like that. The hot dogs is overpriced, but I'm going to still pay the tab every now and then. I'm going to grab me a double cheeseburger, which I think it is one of the most underrated in the city. It don't never make no list, but it is fire.
I get a Polish there. The Maxwell Street Polish.
100%.
Better than their hot dogs for sure.
Michelle, what's your feelings on Portillo's? What was your reaction to hear that they struggling outside the land?
I felt like we failed as a city.
No.
I was so upset because when I moved to Wisconsin for college, I was hyping Portillo's the same way that like West Coast people talk about In-N-Out. And so I was just hyping it up. And then that same year, we got the first Portillo's in Wisconsin in 2016. And so I took all my friends to go have some. They all loved it. And I thought it was going to be the next big thing. I'm like, we're going to be everywhere. Like, this is going to explode. Everyone's going to know what a Chicago hot dog is. Everyone's going to know what an Italian beef is now. Unfortunately, clearly that didn't pan out. So I did kind of take it personal because it's like, as a Chicagoan, you want other people to enjoy your stuff. You want to feel validated that we have the best food. And so at the end of the day, it is a fast food, casual dining restaurant. So it cannot get to the true culinary identity that is Chicago. But yeah, I took it personal. Same thing, Jacoby, growing up in Chicago, I feel like my parents are two Mexicans that moved here in the 90s. So McDonald's was always like our fast food go-to because it was super close to us.
Facts.
And when
kind of a local company in its own way,
Yeah,
right?
my grandparents love to take us to McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald's was our go-to. It was only a few blocks away from my house. And then when my parents discovered Portillo's, their location in Summit, it was like they never spoke of McDonald's again. That was our fast food go-to growing up. And like everyone in my family has had a Portillo's chocolate cake as their birthday cake at some point too. So it's like, that's our go-to. I love it. You guys know I am the Italian beef lover on the team. Y'all don't get it. I always get an Italian beef when I go, and I love Portillo's. I'm sad, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to keep stuff at home. Like, you just got to keep it close to the heart, and maybe that's just where it belongs. Other people couldn't see it through.
I mean, we do love to gatekeep something, but I will say, like, the timing of it all makes sense, right? People were obsessed with Chicago food the last few years. The Bear was popping off, winning awards everywhere, so the Italian beef craze was all over the place. So I find it ironic that as they're announcing that the fifth season going to be the last one, these reports of Portillo's momentum starting to tamper off a little bit are starting to hit. Something else came up while we were talking about this story, Simone, that kind of made us all stop in our tracks, which is, as y'all could tell, me, Emmy, Michelle out here telling childhood stories of Portillo's at family birthday parties, meeting up with the friends. Is one person on here who didn't have any Portillo's stories to share when this report came down.
Yeah, I had never been to Portillo's when I saw this news come down, and that was one reason we didn't talk about it last week, is because I was like, I don't have anything to offer. And it's really funny because when I have said this now to multiple people, and literally every single person gives me the exact same look, which is like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you've never been to Portillo's?
And I kind of feel like saying you haven't walked up the lake or something, like you haven't been to the conservatory.
It's not for any particular reason. So I've lived in Chicago now for a collective near decade. And it was just always one of those things that's like, there's not a location that is super conveniently located to me. I always just kind of thought, like, why am I going to go out of my way to try this fast food joint that I really thought, Michelle, was kind of more along the lines of a McDonald's? Like, I was just sort of like, I didn't realize what the experience was at all. So I just never, and also like Jacoby, I'm not that big on Italian beef. It's not my favorite. And so I was sort of like, why? I feel like it was just, again, it felt like people were selling it as fast food. And it's just like, not, fast food is not something I go out of my way.
In the age of fast food restaurants, sort of dumbing down their decor and the look of their building. I think Portillo's also still got a nostalgic feel to it. Like when you go inside, you feel immersed in the world of Portillo's, like the picnic table cloths,
The music.
yeah,
The big
the
band
iconic
jazz.
branding, yeah, the
Okay.
menu, the neon
Let's-
signs.
Let's get into this. So basically, you guys were like, you need to go and experience this before we can talk about it on the show. So I was like, okay, I'll go on. And so I went on a Saturday. I went to the location, the one off Addison and Kimball, and I ate inside. I didn't go through the drive-through. And the very first question, like when I walked in, the first question I was like, are they all this big?
Yes.
They
Like, this-
are.
It
People
was
be bringing the
huge.
family out.
Yes, there were so many families. I'm pretty sure at least one, kids sports team with some coaches were there too.
Yeah,
Like
always.
everybody was like so many families getting together over food in a way that I actually haven't seen in the wild. I didn't realize like how unusual it was to me to see such a thing because I'm so used to like dining out at like, restaurants that are geared toward adults, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
That are not really geared toward families. And it like, so yeah, number one, it was so big and like the decor. So this is in a brick building that I think is like real masonry. Like it's not like a facade. And like it's all this like Chicago paraphernalia, like historical stuff and like Dad's root beer and the Green River soda, like all these old signs. In the back, they had these like old ballyhoo pinball machines, which like if you know is a Chicago thing, and like they're calling the numbers through the scratchy microphone that no one can actually understand. And yeah, it was just like I'm obsessed with the dining experience of this,
And I feel like
yeah.
I saw some pictures of some of the locations out in Texas, and they're doing the contemporary thing where you just get like a vague looking building that if this business fails, you can quickly flip it into like an insurance company or something like that. And so I don't know if the ones outside of Chicago got the same flavor to
Well,
it.
I was so confused. I was thinking about it. I'm like, if you open this in Texas, are you putting up Chicago historic decor or are you leaning into Texas's like, like their history, diner history or whatever? Like, how do you even thread that needle?
And it feels like Texas, Atlanta, Vegas. I know so many people who have moved to those places, and the fact that you didn't like, if you're not catering to that in some form or fashion, seems like you miss an
Well,
opportunity.
apparently, like when they first opened those new locations in Texas, basically what happened is they initially got like a rush of people, which I imagine a lot of whom were these sort of like folks from Chicago who wanted to show their friends, like, whatever. But then it kind of tapered off. The last thing I'll say about the dining experience and just like the vibe of the place, no white fluorescent light. Oh my gosh, just how much more comfortable it was to be eating my meal sitting down in a booth with like nice warm light. But let's talk about the food as well. Because like I said, not that big on Italian beef. I went with my boyfriend, got an Italian beef that I was going to make him finish because I was convinced that I didn't want it and that I wasn't going to like it. I got a Chicago dog, which I do normally like. That is normally my pick for things. And I got a slice of chocolate cake because, again, intellectually, I understood that was sort of part of the experience. I got to say, too, I'm not that big on cake. I'm not that big on sweets. I'm eating the hot dog. Hot dog is fine. It was pretty mediocre. Emmy, I know you're our hot dog expert here.
Their hot dogs aren't really made with the love that I think the rest of their menu is, honestly, which is ironic since they started as the hot dog house.
I think they did Dog House or something like that.
Dog
yeah,
House?
was the original
Yeah.
name. Was pretty whatever. It was pretty fine. And then my boyfriend gives me the Italian beef so I could take a bite. And in that moment when I'm eating that dipped Italian beef and like the gravy hits my tongue and the bread is like melting in my mouth, I was like, oh, I get the Italian beef now. I understand it. I had not appreciated what it was supposed to be until I tried the Portillo's Italian beef. I was like, this is
So much of
beautiful.
Italian beef evangelists right now listening to that going, that's a wild statement, but I understand.
No, I've had so many that often felt like too salty or like weirdly seasoned or too dry, even when it is dipped. Like something about the gravy or the meat is drying in and of itself, or like the bread the softness of the bread like isn't quite right, or it's totally disintegrating. Like and I know everyone has their opinion. Like everyone likes their Italian beefs in a very particular way. For whatever reason, the Portillo's one clicked with me and I totally liked it. And I absolutely regretted not having one of my own.
On your next visit, Simone, you can graduate to the Italian sausage, Italian beef combo.
Beef combo, yes.
I have done that many times.
It's so funny as a transplant to the Midwest, because I often feel like my capacity for really meaty meals is a little bit lower than your average Midwesterners. But like I'm getting it now. Like I understand. And this is like, I feel like this experience at Portillo's, I understood Chicago much better after having this experiance. And I understood
You texted us immediately with a picture of you eating the cake.
Yes, and I love the cake. I especially love, this is the other wild thing, I don't like the part of cake I don't like is I don't like frosting. I think most frostings are too sweet and the texture is wrong. This was amazing. It was the platonic ideal of a chocolate cake. Like, if you look up chocolate cake in the dictionary, this is the cake. It's the Portillo's chocolate cake. It was delightful, and I ate almost the whole slice, which is pretty impressive as far as Simone eating cake goes.
You know why it's so good?
Why is it so good?
Mayonnaise.
I believe it. I've heard that is true. So I think the next time, Emmy, to your point, I want to do the combo beef sausage, but also get the cake shake, which, as I understand, is also a key.
I haven't been inside in a while. I need to go back in and sip for an experience inside.
I have worked remotely from Portillo's at this job more than once.
I believe it. It's a delightful place to be. Also, I think they have beer too, because I think I saw 2 coaches drinking beer and I was like, oh man, they have booze too? Oh, I've seen the light. But I also, the other thing though, like after this whole experience is I do kind of understand like why this may not work outside of Chicago. Like, number one, that's sort of like, what is the vibe of the place? Like, to me, this was like, oh, this is what fast casual is supposed to be. Like, it's supposed to be a place like where you go with families or your team or your big group or whatever, and you're celebrating and like, you have a quick, nourishing meal and some cake. You know what I mean? I think it's another thing we millennials are killing, right? Is fast casual dining.
Hey, because if I'm going to pay these prices, I might as well get some table service and a $15 cocktail.
I think the Portillo's prices compared to some other places to get a burger, to get an Italian beef or whatever, like they're not bad actually. The hot dog I can't speak to, but the like the burger prices, the beef prices, like I've definitely seen worse around Chicago. But I also think like Chicago struggles in so many ways to export some of its prime like cultural food items. Like, I don't think the Chicago hot dog has really gotten a lot of traction outside of Chicago. And I think one reason for that is just like other people have their own regional dogs and like it's tough to do. I think like deep dish pizza has maybe gotten the farthest. Like I definitely see places, but it's certainly not like, I think Italian beef is one of the hardest ones to sell because I think like you think of most people's conception of like a beef sandwich and maybe it's like a roast beef sandwich, like an Arby's sandwich. You think of like fast food beef sandwich and like that is maybe your first thought. Like I think people really kind of can't conceptualize if you don't know it, if you haven't lived here or if you don't grow up with that kind of thing. Like I don't know that most people can sort of say, oh, an Italian beef is a like gravy-filled beef sandwich, often with peppers, with hot or sweet peppers. Like, I just am not sure that it is like super readable outside of the city. And then if you're not relying on that, then you're relying on your hot dogs and burgers to kind of get you through. And then like you're competing with literally every other fast food joint ever. And so I can kind of see why it doesn't work outside of Chicago or why it can be really difficult.
In addition to private equity coming in and
sure,
ramping up way faster than was probably necessary. But yeah, like you said, it seems like they're making some course corrections at this point. The entire Chicagoland still holding them down. So a story that we'll definitely be following for years to come. I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who stopped by today, including executive producer Simone Alicea.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
Producer Michelle Navarro.
Thanks, Jacoby.
And our newsletter editor, Emmy Mack.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just so glad Simone liked Portillo's.
Before we get out of here, make sure you bookmark our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you can catch up on old podcast episodes, subscribe to our daily newsletter. You can check out our events calendar, which is packed with things to do across the week, including the 312 Day Bash that's going down at Elston Electric this Thursday from 6 to 12. And if you got it like that, please sign up to become a CityCast Chicago neighbor, where you get access to ad-free listening, neighbors-only events starting at $10 a month. You can find us at membership.citycast.fm. One more thing, some good news. More early voting sites are opening this week. Wednesday through Friday, you can vote at Chicago State, Northeastern Illinois, and at University of Chicago Reynolds Club from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Remember, that's only Wednesday through Friday. Early voting is available now across all 50 wards. Your last day is, of course, next Tuesday. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.